Welcome back to This is Thailand. If you've been with us a while, you know the shape of the stories we tell here. Men who came a long way to feel warm again. Men who did their sums, thought they'd been careful, thought they were the exception. Some of them lost everything. Some of them lost almost everything and clawed a little of it back. This is one of the second kind. His name is Bas. He's 54 from the Netherlands, and for 30 years he ran an operations department for a logistics company. The man who made the trucks arrive when they were supposed to, who could tell you where a missing pallet was before the customer finished the sentence. A careful man, a man who files things, who keeps receipts long after anyone could possibly want them. And that habit, that slightly boring, slightly tiresome habit of writing everything down and never quite trusting anything he couldn't reconcile. That habit is the whole story. It's the thing that let a marriage go bad right under his nose for 2 years. And it's the thing that, on the worst night of his life, standing on a Yomtien street in the rain, with a plastic bag of his own clothes, gave him one card left to play, one phone call. We're not going to tell you how that call went. That's his to tell. But we'll say this. Most of the men we feature here were undone by what they didn't write down. Bas was saved by what he did. Here's his story, in his own words. I want to start by saying I am not a stupid man. I know how that sounds. Every fool who ever got taken says that, but I need you to understand the kind of man I am, because it matters for what comes later. For 30 years I ran a department, 60 people, at the busiest. Freight, scheduling, customs paperwork, the whole machine. My whole life was about one thing. Does it reconcile? Does the number on this side match the number on that side? If it doesn't, you don't guess, you don't hope, you find out why. I was good at it. I think, the best they had, though we don't say things like that out loud where I come from. And then one Tuesday, the company offered me an early package, reorganization. They wanted the older, expensive men gone, and they made it worth my while to go quietly. I took it. I was 52. My wife and I had divorced 4 years before that. Quietly, no drama. We simply ran out of things to say to each other. No children. The house was mine to sell. So there I was. A check, a paid-off pension, a house I no longer needed, and something I had never once had in 30 years. Time. Empty, enormous, terrifying time. I want to be honest about this part, because I think it's where the whole thing really begins. When you take away the job, you find out what's underneath it. And what was underneath me was nothing much. I didn't have hobbies. My friends were colleagues, and colleagues stopped calling. I would get up at 6 out of habit, and by 6:30, I had done everything I had to do that day. I made spreadsheets for things that did not need spreadsheets. I reconciled my own grocery spending. That is a man in trouble, and I knew it, and I did not know what to do about it. I sold the house. After everything, the pension lump, the house, the savings I'd kept for 30 years because I don't like to spend, I had a little over 160,000 euros. Comfortable, not rich. Enough to be careful with and never work again if I was sensible. And I am, above all things, sensible. Thailand was not some lifelong dream. I want to correct that, because on this channel I imagine you hear a lot about men who watched videos for years and fell in love with a picture. That wasn't me. A man I used to work with, Garrett, had retired to Hua Hin. He sent me a message. Come, he said. 2 weeks. It's warm, it's cheap, and you look from your photographs like a man who has forgotten how to sit still. He wasn't wrong, so I went. And I told myself it was 2 weeks, a holiday, a way to be somewhere that wasn't my empty flat with its empty calendar. I booked a return ticket. I am telling you, I even booked the return ticket. I was not going to be one of those men. I want to think about that a lot. The man who booked the return ticket, he was so sure of himself. He had a spreadsheet for his holiday budget. He thought the fact that he'd made the spreadsheet meant he was safe. He kept the spreadsheet. That's the thing. He kept all of it. He just didn't know yet what it was for. I landed in Bangkok in the November, and the first thing that hits you, before you see anything, is the air. You come out of the terminal and it is like walking into warm water. Wet, heavy, alive. I stood on the pavement in my gray jacket, a 52-year-old Dutchman in entirely the wrong clothes, sweating, and I felt something I had not felt in 2 years. I felt awake. I'll try to tell this in order. I'm a man who tells things in order. I didn't stay in Bangkok. Too much, too fast. The traffic, the heat coming off the pavement, the noise. Garrett met me and drove me down to the coast, and after a few days in Hua Hin, I made my own way over to Pattaya, and then just south of it to Jom Tien, which is the quieter end. Long Beach, families, older expats on bicycles, a row of condominium towers looking out at the Gulf. I liked it immediately. It was ordered. There were rules to it that a man could learn. I want to be careful how I describe those first weeks, because I don't want you to think I lost my head. I didn't, not at first. I found a small apartment to rent by the month. I learned where the good coffee was, a place on Thaprea Road, where the woman knew my order after 3 days. I learned the song theus, the little blue pickup trucks that run up and down the beach road, 10 baht a ride. You press the buzzer when you want to get off. I learned to eat. My God, I learned to eat. Grilled pork on a stick from the cart on the corner, 20 baht, and sticky rice in a little bag. And I would sit on the seawall in the evening and think, a man could be happy here, in a small, careful way. I extended the ticket. Then I extended it again. Then I stopped pretending there was a ticket. I met Ploy about 6 weeks in, and I want to be precise about how, because everyone assumes they know. They assume a bar, a go-go on Walking Street, a girl young enough to be my daughter, lights and music, and a foolish old man. That is the story you expect, and it is a real story. I saw it happen to men around me over and over. But that is not my story, and the fact that it wasn't is part of how one let my guard down. I met Ploy online. There's a site, ThaiCupid, and Garrett had teased me into making a profile. You sit alone every night with your spreadsheets, he said. At least look at some faces. So I made a profile, and I made it honestly, which I was rather proud of. My real age, a real photo. I wrote that I was a retired manager, that I was orderly and quiet and not looking for a party. I thought, this will filter things. This is a screening process. Even in that, you see, I was running a department. Ploy was 39, not a girl. That mattered to me. It made her real. It made it dignified. She was from Udon Thani, up in Isan, the poor Northeast. But she'd been in Pattaya for years working reception at a hotel, a mid-range place off 2nd Road. She spoke good English, better than most because of the job. She had a son, 16, back in the village with her mother. She was divorced, she said. Her photographs were of a woman at work in a hotel blazer, a woman at a temple in nice clothes, a woman who looked like a person with a life, not a fantasy. We messaged for 2 weeks before we met. 2 weeks. I remember thinking that was sensible. A cooling off period. And I am ashamed of this now, I even started a small note on my laptop about our conversations, the way you'd keep minutes. Not because I suspected anything, because that is simply what I do. I keep minutes. She suggested the coffee place. My coffee place, the one on Thaprea, which I had mentioned. She remembered that I'd mentioned it. A small thing. It felt like being seen. She was late, 20 minutes, and apologetic, and lovely, and she waved to me, the little bow with the hands together, and called me Kun Bas, and I, a large gray Dutchman, did not know where to put myself. We talked for 3 hours. She asked about my work, and unlike anyone in 2 years, she seemed to actually want to understand what an operations manager does, and I told her, and she laughed at the right places. When I walked back to my apartment that night, I noticed I was walking differently. I think about the man walking home that night more than any other version of me in this whole story. Not because he did anything wrong, he hadn't yet, but because he was so happy and so certain that being careful and being safe were the same thing. They are not the same thing. That took me 2 years and nearly everything I owned to learn. The weeks after that first coffee were, I think, the happiest I'd been since before the divorce. We moved on to Line. That's the messaging app everyone uses over there. Not WhatsApp. You learn these small things fast. And my phone, which for 2 years had shown me nothing but bank notifications, started making a little sound in the morning that I found myself waiting for. Good morning, Kun Bas. A photo of her hotel lobby, the marble, the orchid in a bowl at the front desk, a sticker of a cartoon cat holding a heart. Silly things. I was 52 and a cartoon cat was making me smile at my breakfast, and I knew exactly how ridiculous it was, and I did it anyway. I want to point at something here that mattered enormously to me at the time, because it's exactly the kind of thing that let me believe. Ploy never avoided a video call. You hear about this. The woman who's always got a broken camera, always bad signal, always a reason you can't see her face. Every warning list has it near the top. And Ploy was the opposite. She'd call me on video from the staff room at the hotel on her break, in her blazer, with other women laughing behind her. And I could see it was real. It was a real hotel, a real job, a real life. So I crossed that red flag right off my list. Confirmed genuine, I thought, like an invoice I'd matched to a delivery. I was so pleased with myself for checking. It never occurred to me that a woman can be entirely real, entirely who she says she is at work, and still be lying to you about the one thing that matters. She told me about her son early, which also felt like honesty. His name, his school, his marks, which were not good. A boy of 16 up in the village playing football when he should be studying. She showed me photographs. She worried about him out loud the way a real mother does, not performing it, just tired about it. And I, a man with no children, found something in me responding to that. I liked being told the small, ordinary troubles of a family. It made me feel included in a life again. The thing about doing it slowly is that it never feels like the mistake it turns out to be. If a stranger had come to me on day one and said, "Give this woman 2.6 million baht and marry her and build a house you can never legally own in a village you've never seen," I would have laughed. I would have made a list of reasons not to. But nobody asks you for the whole thing on day one. They ask you for a coffee, then a dinner, then a small favor. And each step is so reasonable, so easy to justify, that saying no would make you look like a paranoid, mean old man. And I did not want to be that man. That, I think, was the crack in me. Not loneliness exactly, vanity. I wanted to be the generous one, the calm one, the man who was too clever to be fooled and too kind to be stingy. For the first few months, honestly, it was wonderful. I'm not going to lie about that to make the ending land better. Ploy was good company. She'd finish her shift at the hotel and we'd eat somewhere. A som tam place on Soi Bua Khao, where the papaya salad took the roof off your mouth, or a proper sit-down dinner she'd never let me overpay for at first. That was important to me, that at the start she argued about the bill. She'd say, "Bass, not everything. I have my own money." And I believed her, because it was true. She did have a job, she did have her own money, and this is exactly what made the rest of it work. Money came into it gently. Her mother up in Udon had trouble with her legs, and there were doctor visits, and 1 month Ploy was short. She didn't ask. She mentioned it and then changed the subject. I would learn that this was how it always went. The mention and then the turning away. The kreng jai, the not wanting to impose, which in Thailand is a real and beautiful thing, and also in the wrong hands an extremely effective way to ask without asking. I offered 10,000 baht, about 260 euros. Nothing to me, everything to them, she said. And her gratitude was so genuine, or seemed so, that I felt I'd bought something priceless for the price of a nice dinner back home. Then it was a regular thing. 20,000 baht a month, 520 euros for the family up north. The mother, the son's schooling, the house that always needed something. I could afford it. I had done the arithmetic. 20,000 a month against my savings was nothing, would last decades, and it made me feel useful. You have to understand what that meant to a man who'd spent 2 years being useful to no one. I wasn't buying her, I was buying back the feeling of mattering. That is a much more expensive thing and much harder to see on a bank statement. Here is where my nature both saved me and, I think, blinded me. Because I did put it on a spreadsheet. Every transfer, every date, every amount into her Casacorn account. I told myself I was just being tidy. But there is a difference between recording something and questioning it, and I was doing the first while completely failing to do the second. I could have told you to the baht what I had given her. I could not have told you why the amounts kept quietly growing. After about 8 months, she raised the idea of the condo. Not pushily. She was, if anything, the one saying, be careful. Rent is money thrown away, she said. You're paying month after month for nothing, and property in Yomtien only goes up. And she was right. That's the thing. She was completely right. It was good advice. There was a unit in a decent building set back from Jomtien Beach, a foreign quota unit, 2 bedrooms, a sea glimpse if you leaned off the balcony, 2.6 million baht, around 68,000 euros. Now, I want to slow down here because this is the single most important decision in the entire story. And at the time, it felt like the least romantic one. I knew, because I read everything before I sign anything. It is a sickness with me. I knew that a foreigner cannot own land in Thailand. Cannot. Not really, not the tricks people use. But a foreigner can own a condominium unit outright, freehold in his own name, as long as the building stays under 49% foreign owned. This building had room in the quota. The lawyer confirmed it, so I bought it, in my name. Bass and only Bass on the title deed, the cha note, registered at the land office in Banglamong with my passport number on it. Ploy was fine with this. Completely fine. Why wouldn't she be? We weren't even married yet, and it would have been mad to put a near stranger on it. I remember she said, of course, Bass, it's your money. It should be your name. And I thought, what a sensible, honest woman. I did not understand that day at the land office that I had just quietly put the one thing they could never take out of my reach into my own name, in writing, with a government stamp on it. I thought I was just being tidy. There's a rhythm to those first months in Yomtien that I still miss, if I'm honest, even knowing how it ended. The mornings were the best of it. I'd wake early. I always wake early, and go down to the beach road before the heat came, when the monks were still out on the alms round, walking barefoot in their orange robes with the steel bowls, and the local people kneeling on the pavement to give rice, and the temple bell from the Wat behind the Praya coming across the rooftops. I am not a religious man, but there is something in that hour in Thailand that reaches into a Dutchman who has never prayed in his life and quiets him. I'd buy grilled pork on a stick and sticky rice from the same cart, and the woman would fold the little plastic bag the same way every time, and I'd sit on the sea wall and watch the fishing boats and feel, for the first time in years, that a day had a shape. And in the evenings, Ploy. Her shifts changed, so it wasn't every night, but often. We'd eat cheap, mostly, which I liked. A som-tam place on Soi Buahao, with plastic stools and a fan that didn't reach you, where the papaya salad was pounded so fierce with chili that I sweated through my shirt and loved it, or Mu Ping in a cold Leo from a cart. She showed me her pattaya, the one behind the neon, the one the tourists never see, the temple where she made merit on her days off, releasing little birds from a cage for good luck, which I later learned they just catch again. And I remember thinking even then, there's Thailand in one image, the same bird sold to you as freedom over and over. She took me to the wet market at dawn once, the fish still moving, the smell of it, the old women with their betel-stained teeth, and she held my arm through it, proud to show the farang the real thing. I never felt like a mark in those months. I felt like a man being let into a life. That's the cruelty of a slow one. It gives you real things so that when the false thing arrives, you've no practice at doubting it. We married about a year after we met. The wedding was in the village, near Udon Thani, and it was the first time I'd been up to Isan, and I'll tell you, it cracked something open in me. The poverty is real. Wooden houses on stilts, the buffalo, the red dust, the whole family living on what a man in Holland spends on his car. And they were kind to me. Genuinely, warmly kind. The mother held my hands and cried. The uncles got me drunk on Hong Tong whiskey mixed with soda and ice until the karaoke started. I sat there, this pink sweating Dutchman, more welcome than I'd felt at my own retirement party. And I thought, these are good people, and I have been lucky, and all the horror stories are about other, more foolish men. There was a sin sod, of course, the bride price, 300,000 baht, around 7,800 euros, laid out on a tray with gold for the family's honor, to show I could provide, to show respect. I'd read about it. I knew that sometimes it's returned quietly after the ceremony, and sometimes it very much is not. It was not. And the gold, another 150,000 baht or so, 4,000 euros, hung around Ploy's neck for the photographs. I told myself it was tradition, and it was tradition, and I was happy to pay it. We registered the marriage properly at the Am4, the district office, with the stamps and the little booklet. I want you to remember that we registered it at the Am4. That comes back. That comes back in a way I could never have imagined, sitting there signing my name, thinking I had just done the most solid, official, reconcilable thing in the world. I want to say something here about the money that flowed north, because I think foreigners get this exactly wrong in both directions, and I got it wrong myself for a long time. The monthly support, the 20,000 baht, the 520 euros, was not in itself a scam. In Isan, an eldest or a working daughter supporting her parents is not manipulation. It's simply how the whole society holds itself up. There's no pension in a village like that. The children are the pension. A foreign husband is expected to help, and helping raises the family standing. And there's a genuine gratitude in it that you can feel is real. I've watched other men refuse it entirely, out of principle, and lose a good woman and her whole family over what was actually a reasonable expectation. So I don't regret the support. If that had been all of it, I'd have paid it happily for 20 years and called it the cost of belonging somewhere. The problem was never the money that went where I thought it went. The problem was the money that didn't. And for the longest time, I couldn't tell the two apart because they left from the same account on the same days wearing the same clothes. That's the trap of it. The genuine obligation and the quiet theft travel together, and the genuine one is such good cover for the other that even a man who audits his own groceries can't see the join. It took me 2 years and a spreadsheet to separate them. Most men never do. Most men either pay everything and get bled, or refuse everything and get lonely. I don't know that there's an easy place to stand in the middle. I'm still not sure I ever found it. I file everything. I've said that. I kept my copy of that marriage booklet and the sin-sod photographs and the receipt for the gold in a plastic folder, in a drawer, with everything else. It's strange, the things that save you. I didn't keep that folder because I was suspicious. I kept it because I don't know how to not keep things. And 2 years later, that folder was the only reason I'm not telling you a very different story. The house was Ploy's dream, and I want to be fair. I think it was a real dream, not a con. A woman who grew up in a wooden house, wanting a concrete one for her mother, with tile and a proper bathroom, is not a criminal. That's just a person wanting the thing everyone wants. So when she started, gently in her way, to talk about building on the family land in the village, I understood it, and part of me even wanted to give it to her. The generous man again. Always the generous man. But here was the problem, and I knew it before she said a word. I could not own that land. No foreigner can. It was family land in Isan, and there is no legal way on this earth for my name to go on it. So how, I asked, does this work? And this is where I should have stood up and left. And instead, I let a very charming solution be explained to me. There was a lawyer, not my lawyer, hers, or rather a man an uncle knew, who did these things all the time, who handled this for Farang husbands constantly. No problem, everybody does it. The way it works, he explained, over sweet coffee in an office in Udon, with a spirit house out front, is you set up a Thai limited company. The company owns the land. You, the foreigner, can be a director, you can control it, and the Thai shareholders, well, they just sign. Nominees, family members mostly, who hold the shares on paper but have no real say. You put in the money, the company holds the house, everyone's happy. Now, something in me went cold when he said it, because I had read about exactly this. Nominee shareholding to let a foreigner control land is illegal in Thailand. Flatly illegal under the land code. It's a fiction the authorities have cracked down on. And when they unwind one of these companies, it is not the sweet-talking lawyer who gets hurt. It's the structure that collapses and the assets that get frozen. I knew this. I said as much, carefully, in my formal way. And they all laughed, kindly, the way you laugh at a nervous child. Everybody does it, Bass. This is Thailand. It's fine. This is Thailand. I heard that phrase so many times, always as the answer to a question I was right to ask. So did I sign? Here's the thing. And this is the manager in me. The man who's watched 100 deals go wrong because someone signed before the numbers reconciled. I did not sign as a director. I said I would think about it. I said I wanted to see documents. And while I stalled, I did the only thing I know how to do. I started paying in stages. Because Ploy was pushing now, and the family was expecting it, and to refuse would have been to lose face for all of them, and I could not bear to be the mean Farang. So I released the first tranche for the build, about 700,000 baht, a little over 18,000 euros, for foundations, for pillars, for the block work, and I told them the rest would come as the work progressed, which is standard. Any operations man pays against delivery. And I got receipts. I got receipts for everything, and copies of the company registration they'd filed, and the shareholder lists with the uncle and the cousins on it. And I put it all in the plastic folder in the drawer. And I told myself I was just being tidy. I was building a file. I did not know yet that I was building a file, but some old instinct in me had smelled something at that coffee table in Udon. And while my heart was busy being generous, my hands were quietly keeping the paper. The house went up, slower than promised, more expensive than promised. The sand needed extra, the roof was more, always a little more. And I paid in stages watching, and it was around then, with the house half built and my money flowing north every week, that I first noticed something that did not reconcile. It was nothing dramatic. That's what I want people to understand. It never announces itself. I was doing what I always do, going through the online banking on a Sunday morning with my coffee, matching what I'd sent against what I'd agreed to send. And there was a transfer I didn't remember agreeing to. 50,000 baht, 1,300 euros, out of the joint account we'd opened for household things, gone to an account I didn't recognize. When I asked Ploy, she said it was for the builder. Fine, except I paid the builder myself, directly, always on my own schedule. So who was this? She had an answer, of course. She always had an answer. A cousin who fronted cash for materials. And I nodded, and I let it go. Out loud. But that night I opened a new sheet on my laptop, and I went back. Months back. And I started matching every bot that had left every account against a reason, the way I'd have audited a supplier who I thought was padding invoices. I need to explain how I actually did it, because I think it's the most useful part of this whole story for anyone watching, more useful than the drama at the end. I didn't confront. I didn't rage. I did what I did for 30 years with a supplier I suspected of padding an invoice. I built a clean sheet, one column, every outgoing transaction from every account we touched, going back to the beginning. A second column, the reason for it, in my own words, only if I actually knew the reason with certainty. Household, builder, tranche 1, mother, hospital, support, monthly, and a third column for anything where the second column had to be a guess. And then I did the only thing that matters. I refused to let myself write a comfortable guess. If I didn't know, the cell stayed empty and red. My whole career was learning that the empty red cells are where the truth lives, and that the temptation, always, is to fill them with a story that lets you stop looking. There were a lot of empty red cells, more every weekend. I'd sit with my coffee on the balcony while Ploy slept in, the ceiling fan turning, the sound of the song they used starting up on Praia below, and I'd match bot to reason, quietly, the way another man might do a crossword. It took me a few weekends, doing it quietly, saying nothing, and a picture came up out of the numbers, the way a picture always does if you're patient. There was a steady leak. Small amounts, regular, to 2 or 3 accounts that had nothing to do with the family support I knew about and had agreed to. Over about 2 years, once I added it all up, something close to 800,000 baht, around 21,000 euros, had gone somewhere I couldn't account for. Not the house, not the mother's legs. Somewhere else. And there was one name that kept appearing on the receiving end. A man's name. I didn't know it. I wrote it down. I want to tell you why I confronted her then, like a strong man in a film. I didn't. Because here's the truth about being the careful type. When you finally see the thing you were afraid of, the first instinct is not to act. It's to make sure. To reconcile it 3 more times before you say a word. Because you have spent your whole life being the man who doesn't accuse until he's certain. So I said nothing. I kept paying, kept smiling, kept my folder growing in the drawer. And I quietly did 2 things. First, I did not release the next tranche for the house. I invented delays. Cash flow, I said. In Holland, tax business, it will come. The operations man holding back a payment against a delivery he no longer trusted. Second, I went and found a lawyer of my own. Not the uncle's man. A Thai lawyer in Pattaya, Kunanong, a sharp woman with an office near the avenue, and a wall of certificates who a British acquaintance of Garrett's had used in a property dispute and swore by. I went alone. I told Ploy I was going to the bank, and I sat across from Kunanong, and I put my plastic folder on her desk. The title deed to the condo in my name, the marriage booklet, the company registration, the nominee shareholder list, the receipts, the spreadsheet of transfers, the man's name. And I said, in my careful English, I would like you to tell me where I actually stand. Everything. Reconcile it for me. She went through it slowly, and then she looked up at me and she asked me a question that changed everything. She asked, Kunbas, are you completely sure your wife was divorced before she married you? I said Ploy had told me she was divorced. Kunanong made a small note and said, I would like to check something at the Amphor. On the drive back that day, I kept thinking about the phrase they'd used at that coffee table in Udon, and that Ploy used, and that half of Thailand seems to use when a Farang asks a sensible question. This is Thailand. It's meant kindly mostly, and it's meant as an answer. And what it really means is, stop asking. This is how it works here. You can't understand? Don't push. And for 2 years, I had let it stop me. I had let 3 little words do what a lifetime of training told me never to let anything do. Close a red cell with a story instead of a fact. Every time the numbers didn't reconcile, someone smiled and said, this is Thailand. And I, who would have torn a supplier apart for far less, smiled back and let it go. Because I was a guest, because I was in love, because I did not want to be the ugly, suspicious foreigner. That phrase cost me more than any single transfer did. It's the most expensive sentence in the country. I drove home that afternoon not knowing anything for certain yet, but for the first time in 2 years the numbers had stopped lying to me, and I had put every piece of paper that mattered into the hands of someone whose only job was to make it reconcile. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sick, but under the sickness, very quiet, there was the old feeling from 30 years of work, the feeling of a man who's finally found the discrepancy and knows that from here it's just a matter of following it to the end. The end came faster than I expected, and it came at night, in the rain, the way these things apparently like to. I need to set it up honestly. In the weeks after I saw Kunanong, I changed and Ploy felt it. I couldn't hide it perfectly. I'm not an actor, I'm an administrator. I'd stopped the house payments, I was quieter. I'd moved some things quietly at the bank. I'd already, long before, kept about 60,000 euros back home in the Netherlands and never brought it over, out of nothing but Dutch caution, and now I made sure she had no access, no power of attorney, no signature that could reach it. She had never had it. That again was just my nature. I don't give anyone a signature over my money, not even a wife, especially, it turns out, not even a wife. And she could feel the tap being turned off. And when the money stops, in these situations, everything that was hidden comes to the surface fast, because there's no longer a reason to keep pretending. It came to a head over the house. The builder had stopped, because I'd stopped, and the family was furious, losing face in the village with a half-finished concrete shell that everyone could see. And Ploy came home from the north one evening in a temper I had never seen. Gone was the soft woman who weighed me in a coffee shop. She wanted the next tranche. She wanted it now. And I, God help me, chose that night to be honest, because I am constitutionally incapable of a lie when I'm cornered. I said, Ploy, I know about the transfers. I know about the money going somewhere else. I know the company that owns your house is illegal, and I will not put my name to it or another euro into it until I understand where 21,000 euros went. I watched her face do something I'll remember till I die. It didn't crumple, it hardened. The love, or the performance of love, just switched off, like a screen going dark. And she said, in English, so there'd be no mistake, "This is my country. You are nothing here. This condo, everything, get out." And then she threw me out. Literally, she screamed. The neighbors came to the corridor. She flung a plastic laundry bag with some of my clothes in it out the door. And in the noise and the shame of it, the farang face I could not bear to lose, I actually left. I walked out of my own condo in my own name, into the street, into a proper Thai downpour, the warm rain coming down like a bucket, standing on the pavement on the Praya Road at 10 at night, with a bag of clothes and no shoes on properly, a 54-year-old Dutchman soaked to the bone. And I want to tell you what I felt, because it's the honest center of this whole thing. I felt for about 90 seconds that I had lost everything, that she was right, that this was her country and I was nothing, and the horror story had come for me after all, just like all the others. And I was going to be one more broken old man drinking in a bar telling anyone who'd listen how he'd been robbed. 90 seconds. That's how long the panic lasted. And then the other man, the operations man, the one who files things, came back online. And he said very calmly inside my soaked skull, "This does not reconcile." She says the condo is hers. The title deed says otherwise. The title deed is in a drawer. And you know exactly who has a copy of it. Let me stay in that moment a little longer, because I think it's the moment everything in this story was actually decided, long before the lawyer's letter. I was standing there soaked through, and I could feel two men in me, and they wanted completely different things. One of them wanted to go back up and bang on that door. Beg or shout, save the marriage, save face, not be the man abandoned in the street. The lonely man, the one who'd paid 20,000 baht a month to feel like he mattered, and who would have paid it forever rather than admit the whole thing had been a fiction. That man was louder. That man is always louder at 10 o'clock at night in the rain. And the other one was very quiet and very cold, and he wasn't thinking about the marriage at all. He was thinking about a drawer. He was thinking with a terrible flat calm about a chenote with a passport number on it, and a spreadsheet with a stranger's name on it, and a marriage booklet with a date on it, and a company registration I had never signed. He wasn't angry. He was reconciling. And he said the sentence that saved my life out there, as plain as a man reading a shipping manifest. She does not have a single piece of paper, and you have all of them. I chose to listen to the quiet one. That's the only decision in this entire story I'm actually proud of. Not the years of filing. That was just my nature. I can't take credit for a compulsion. But standing in that rain, ashamed, rejected, believing for 90 seconds that I was nothing, and choosing to listen to the boring cold accountant instead of the frightened lonely husband. That I chose. I stood under the awning of a 7-Eleven, water running off the edge of it in a sheet, the fluorescent light and the smell of the sausages on the rollers, and I took out my phone, and it still worked, and I called Kunanong. 10 o'clock at night. She answered. I told her, standing there dripping onto the tiles by the sausages turning on their rollers. I told her what had happened, that my wife had thrown me out and claimed the condo and everything in it. And Kunanong was quiet for a moment, and then she said something I will hear for the rest of my life. She said, "Kun Bas." Good. Now listen to me carefully, because everything you kept is about to become very useful, and everything she did is about to become very expensive. Do not go back in tonight. Book a hotel, keep the receipt, and come to my office at 9. That was the one phone call. That's the one the whole thing turns on. Not a threat, not a trick. A man who kept the paper, calling the person who could read it. And here is what she laid out for me the next morning. Dry now, in a clean shirt, in her office near the avenue. And I will give it to you plainly because this is the part one, hope somebody watching writes down. 1. The condo. The condo is mine. Is freehold foreign quota registered at the land office with my passport number on the Chinote. Ploy has no claim to it whatsoever. It was bought before the marriage, in my sole name, with money I could trace to my own Dutch accounts. Kunanong had the spreadsheet. Under Thai law, a foreigner absolutely can own that unit, and I did alone. So when Ploy threw me out and said, "Get out," it was legally her, not me, who had no right to be in that apartment. I could have the police remove her. She was, in the eyes of the law, a guest I could withdraw permission from at any moment. 2. The house and the company. The nominee company holding the land in the village, the thing I had refused to sign as director of, was an illegal structure under the land code. And Kunanong explained gently that this cut two ways. Yes, the money I'd put in was tangled and hard to fully recover. But the people exposed to prosecution for an illegal nominee arrangement were the Thai nationals who set it up and signed as nominees. Ploy and her uncle and the cousins. Not the foreigner who had wisely never become a director. I hadn't signed. My hands were clean and theirs were not. 3. And this was the one that ended it. Kunanong had done what she said she'd do. She checked at the AMFR. Ploy had never been divorced. She was still legally married to a Thai man, the name from my spreadsheet, the account the money had been quietly flowing to for 2 years. That was her husband, her actual, registered, never divorced husband up in Nong Khai, which meant our marriage, the one we'd registered at the district office with the stamps and the little booklet I'd so carefully filed, was bigamous, void, a crime. On her side. She had committed a criminal offense the day she married me, and I could prove the date because of course I could. I had the booklet. I sat in that chair and I did the sum in my head, the way I always do. And for the first time in a very long time, the numbers came out in my favor. Kun Anong did not have to do very much in the end. That's the strange, quiet truth of it. There was no dramatic courtroom. She simply sent a letter. The letter, in careful Thai legal language, said what I now knew, that the condominium was my sole legal property and my wife would be removed by the police if she did not vacate it, that we were aware the land company was an unlawful nominee arrangement, and that continuing to press me would oblige us to lay the whole structure before the authorities, the land office, and if need be the police, with names and signatures attached, and that we had confirmed at the AMFR that our marriage was void by reason of her existing marriage, which was a matter she would presumably not wish examined too closely, given what the law says about it. Kunanong translated it for me before she sent it, and then she looked at me over her glasses and said, in English, Kun Bas, this is not a threat. It is only a list of true things. But she does not want any of these true things to become official. So I think she will be very reasonable now. She was extremely reasonable now. Within a week, the woman who had told me I was nothing in her country and thrown me into the rain was, through her own uncle's lawyer, asking to settle. Quietly, no police, no land office, no AMFR, please, please, no face lost that couldn't be recovered. The saving of face that had been used on me for 2 years to keep me paying, I finally understood that it was a currency and that I was suddenly, unexpectedly, the one holding it. We settled. I want to be honest and unglamorous about the terms, because this is the close call part, not a fairy tale. And I did not walk away clean. I kept the condo, fully cleanly mine, and it was and is my single biggest asset here. 2.6 million baht, 68,000 euros, the sea glimpse off the balcony, and to this day I sleep in it every night. She vacated it within days. The house money, the 700,000 baht, the 18,000 euros I'd sunk into a concrete shell on land I could never own. Most of that I had to write off. You cannot easily unpick an illegal structure and get your money back out of it. The price of not signing was that I also never truly owned any of it. I recovered a portion in the settlement, maybe a third, because she'd rather return something than have the company opened up. Call it a loss of around 12,000 euros on the house in the end. The siphoned money, the 21,000 euros that had quietly flowed to a husband I didn't know she had. I clawed a good deal of that back too, in the settlement, for the same reason. Not all. She returned, I think, around 13,000 of it. The rest is gone, in Nong Khai, spent. The sin, sod, and the gold, the 12,000 euros of bride price and jewelry that I never saw again and never expected to. That's tradition. I paid to be welcomed, and I was welcomed. I don't grudge it. Add it up and reconcile it the way I do. Against the 160,000 euros I came with, I lost, after everything came back, somewhere around 30,000. Sin, sod, gold, the sunk part of the house, the part of the siphon I couldn't recover, and Kun Anong's fees, which I paid gladly, every baht. 30,000 euros for a 2-year education. It's a lot of money, I feel it. But I kept the condo. I kept the 60,000 safe in Holland that she never even knew the full size of. I kept the great bulk of what I am. And I am not in a bar telling you I lost everything, because I so very nearly was. I think about that night in the rain a great deal. Not the betrayal. I've made my peace with the betrayal, more or less. I think about the 90 seconds when I believed her, when I stood soaked on Thaprea Road and genuinely accepted that I was nothing, that this was her country, that I had lost. Because that is the moment they win, if they win. Not with the lie, with getting you to believe the lie about yourself. And what pulled me out of it wasn't courage and it wasn't cleverness. It was a boring, tiresome, 30-year habit of never throwing away a piece of paper and never signing anything I couldn't reconcile. The same joyless carefulness that made me a hard man to be married to. My ex-wife would tell you, the man audits his own groceries, that carefulness was the only reason I still had a home to sleep in the next night. I don't hate ploy. I want to say that clearly, because I know how easy it would be for a story like this to curdle into hating a whole country of women, and I've heard men do it in the bars, and it's ugly and it's stupid and it isn't true. Ploy did me a real wrong. She lied about a husband and she siphoned my money to him and she tried to take my home and throw me in the street. One woman did that. One. Her mother's kindness was real. The village's welcome was real. The country that I love, and I do love it. I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. The country didn't do this to me. A person did, and I let her because I wanted so badly to feel like I mattered again that I paid 20,000 baht a month for the feeling and called it love. That's the part one own. One wasn't robbed by a clever criminal. I was a lonely man who saw the small things not reconciling for 2 years and chose again and again to record them instead of question them. The file that saved me is also the proof that I saw it coming the whole time and didn't want to look. The strangest part of the aftermath was how ordinary it felt. There was no thunderclap. 1 week she was screaming that I was nothing in her country, and a few weeks later I was sitting alone on my own balcony again, in my own condo, with the ceiling fan turning and the same song thous grinding up the praia below. And it was quiet, and it was mine, and I honestly did not know for a while what to do with myself. Winning a thing like this doesn't feel like winning. It feels like a room going silent. I'd protected my home and my money and my name, and the price of that was that I was, once again, exactly the man I'd been before I ever landed. A careful man, alone, with too much time. I went up to Isan one last time, months later, to close the file properly, because I cannot leave a thing unreconciled even when it hurts me. The half-built house was still standing there in the village, gray and roofless, the rebar rusting out of the pillars, a monument to 18,000 euros, and a lie. Ploy's mother was there, and this is the part that has stayed with me most. She weighed to me, the old woman, and she cried, and I believed the tears. I still believe them. She hadn't known. The kindness up there had been real. It's possible, I've learned, for a family to genuinely love you, and for one person in it to be quietly robbing you at the same time, and for the money to flow past all that love to a man in Nong Khai you've never met. Both things true at once. Thailand taught me to hold two true things in one hand without dropping either. That may be the only wisdom I actually earned. I'm all right now, better than all right. I still get my coffee on Thaprea. The woman still knows my order. I've learned some Thai properly from a teacher, not from a wife. I have a small circle now. Garrett comes down, a few of the sensible expats, The ones who aren't bitter. And I keep my folder. I'll always keep my folder. Only now I understand what it was always for. If you take one thing from a boring Dutchman, take this. Be generous by all means. Fall in love, even at 54, even in the rain. But own the thing in your own name. Never sign what you can't reconcile. And keep the paper. Keep all of it. Because they can take your money and your pride and even for 90 seconds your idea of who you are. But they cannot take what's registered at the land office with your passport number on it. And they cannot take the drawer. That's bass. And I'll be honest with you. Of all the men we've had on this channel, he's one of the few I'd call lucky, and he'd be the first to tell you it wasn't luck. He'd tell you it was filing. But sit with the shape of it for a moment, because it's not really a story about a clever man beating a con. It's a story about a lonely one who nearly gave himself away, and who was saved not by his best qualities, but by his most tiresome one. He didn't win because his heart was wise. His heart was as foolish as anyone's. He paid for the feeling of mattering and called it a marriage, and he'll tell you so. He won because one cold, careful corner of him never fully trusted the warmth and kept the receipts while the rest of him fell in love. There's something a little sad in that, honestly. The same armor that saved his home is the armor that made him lonely enough to need saving in the first place. Ploy isn't a monster in a fairy tale. She's a woman with a husband and a poor family and a half-built house and a farang who represented a way out. And she made a set of choices that were dishonest and, in the end, criminal. And she is facing the truth of them now instead of him. That's not cruelty. That's just the paperwork catching up. Putting someone in the right place, if you want to call it that, only means letting the true things be true out loud. If this one hit you, if you're a careful person who's ever wondered whether being careful is the same as being safe, or a lonely one thinking about a warm country and a soft voice, do us a favor. Hit subscribe. Share it with someone who's about to sign something they haven't read twice. Take care of yourselves out there. This is Thailand.